Hello and welcome to this week's edition. One of this week's podcasts. I'm recording a lot of podcasts right now. Formula whatever. It's the F1 off season. Lewis Hamilton is officially a Ferrari driver now. And the F1 internet is being deranged. It's the off season. There's some kind of news to talk about. We should probably talk about the Red Bull driver situation because we now have resolution on the Red Bull driver situation, at least for 2025.
Well, let's not say all the way through 2025.
Well, the only reason I think there will be resolution for the entirety of 2025 is I think they're really out of moves. There's nobody really left in the pipeline to do anything, even if they wanted to make a mid-season change. But trying to think, has there been actual meaningful news other than that since the last time we recorded? I don't really think so.
Pierre Gasly shaved his head.
Oh my god, what is that man doing? what he looked the ugliest I've ever seen him in that photo. I don't know. So I decided, because you got mad at me the last time I tried to make a historical argument on the podcast. You were like, you have to let me prepare. You can't just spring stuff on me. So I am stealing a ringer, big picture gimmick. We're ranking F1's Mount Rushmore, but we also have to assign a person. We have to assign our people to a specific president. Yes, I am blatantly ripping off what the big picture did. No, I don't give a singular shit. I enjoy ripping off Ringer Bill Simmons, content. It's fun. It works. But before that, we need to argue about something completely unrelated to F1. Or not argue. What do you make of all of this Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively shit? Because it's not funny. Obviously, if someone is being sexually harassed, that is very bad. But two lawsuits now, two very different pictures of the universe, and it's just messy as shit.
Well, I think the fact that he's suing the New York Times and not her is very telling. And he said, part of the New York Times lawsuit is that they didn't publish all of the emails or the communications that they got from the PR agency. But I took a look at the ones that they left out, and it was them being oh, I'm going to be underground. So I might, it did not seem, I understood why they cut what they cut. Right. And good luck suing the New York Times. That historically has not gone well. I mean, they won against the Department of Defense. So if you think you can bring more heat than the DOD, good luck. But
it's just, I mean, I have no idea who's quote unquote right and who's quote unquote wrong. These are, I don't like Ryan Reynolds. And I think the fact that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds had got married on a ex-slave plantation does not
have anything to do with this situation. Two things can be true at the same time. Blake Lively can be a bad person and also have gotten sexually harassed on this movie. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Correct. But let me finish, because the point I was going to make is I definitely came at this at first with a sort of before the lawsuit and before the sexual harassment stuff sort of came out. It was I'm not exactly Team Blake Lively for, many what I would call legitimate reasons. But this is just chaotic and shambolic and messy and
I was on her side purely because I think that about quarterly, the internet just wakes up and is this is the woman we're going to hate for the next 2 months, right? And I just don't like that. I think that Blake Lively has earned her share of criticism, and the plantation thing was, I knew about that in 2020 when it came up. And I think Blake Lively has always come across, there's some stuff with the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants where she was like, she's always come across like a little bit, she thinks a lot of herself, right, as an artiste. And I'm a little bit like, all right, whatever. But that being said, all of that reeked of a comms plan to me personally. And I don't like Colleen Hoover. I think her books are bad. I think this movie was bad. I didn't see it. I'm assuming it was bad. But Colleen Hoover was on Blake Lively's side. So if we're, from an artistic perspective, you have to go with the author, right? Like,
okay,
it's her vision.
Okay, but Colleen Hoover is basically Satan.
Well, yes, I agree with you, but I wasn't the one who decided to make this movie. I'm saying Justin, was all in on the movie. I think the concept is the problem. The book is the problem.
Selling a movie about the cycle of domestic abuse and domestic violence and basically teeing up that she is going to get to say it, aka the cycle of violence ends with us in this dramatic thing after 2 hours. Selling that as like a, oh my god, girls' night out movie, which they literally explicitly did, is one of the most arranged things about any of this. And I feel like we need to honestly, if we need a woman to hate for the next few months, can it be Colleen Hoover?
Well, right. Like, that's every criticism of this movie I agree with, but that comes from the book. Like, it's not like the book is any different than that. And the way Blake Lively was criticized for talking about it with like the florals and don't talk about the domestic violence part of it, even though that's like the entire like point of it, that all came from, she was instructed on that, at least according to the lawsuit. We don't know, but, and also the whole, she is hard to work with. After those list of her crazy demands, which was like, hey, could I not be sexually harassed and or bordering on assault? You know what I mean? Like, oh, she's so difficult to work with and a diva, like, because she doesn't want your best friend's hands in her fucking hoo-ha. Like, you know what I mean?
It is certainly, again, it's one of these things where it's like, I need this to go to trial. And I usually don't care about any of these things. I just need it to go to trial because I would actually watch that trial because it is so like the accounts are so contradictory that, oh boy, somebody is not telling the truth.
Well, and I also think the fact that the whole cast unfollowed him and still follows her is very telling, right? Like,
yeah.
Those were the people that were there that physically witnessed it. I mean, we'll see when it goes to trial, but if it goes to trial.
Generally, people don't. I was expecting when I heard he filed a countersuit, I expected it to be way less, like there to be less meat on the bone. Again, whether that meat is true or not, who knows, right? But like, didn't expect it to be like. Although again, most of the like sexual, like I don't know, it feels like she could be controlling and have tried to take over the movie. The intimacy coordinator stuff seems whatever. It's just like, it's not. I mean, he's denied it, but it's not like he has actual like proof that he like. What we need is Sony to be deposed because I need to find out, because if he actually did the things and there was actually the like contract deal that he was gonna stop showing videos of his wife and stop mentioning his porn addiction and all that, like that's obviously gonna be fascinating. But like, this is the kind of thing where it's just messy and it's kind of like stupidly entertaining. Not that any of this is like funny again, but
I just think it's very, I don't know. I believe women, I believe her, and the fact that, not that once again, with the script and everything, all that jazz, Colleen Hoover was on her side. So artistically, if we are here to, bring her story and her vision to life, that's what we have to be faithful to, right? Like, if you're buying into the concept of the movie, which obviously neither of us are. But in terms of that, and also, like, I don't know, I just don't trust a male feminist. Like, if I had to guess, and why do the smear campaign? You know what I mean?
Okay, the reason you do the smear campaign is because you got, like, essentially completely excised from the, like, actual literally doing your job as producer and director on the movie. Like, I'd be pretty pissed about that. I'd be pretty pissed if Ryan Reynolds was rewriting my shots. I'd be pretty pissed.
Sure. But I don't know. Those are some extremely specific claims to not be true.
That is the one advantage. Advantage is such a weird word to use, but, like, that is a generally true principle for me. Is that, like, the more specific the claim, the more likely it is to be true. Anyways, I just had takes on this, and I need to talk about this with somebody. Do you have a take on Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson? We kind of knew it was going to be Lawson the whole time.
Yeah, well, because people like to make it a Helmut Marko is racist thing, which he for sure is, but they also hired Checo, you know what I mean? And he was, like, openly racist toward him. I think the Yuki thing has more to do with the Honda of it all. And also, but I just don't know. I don't think either of them really laid down what they needed to lay down to, like, undisputably have earned that spot. I would have liked it seem to go to Yuki just because I like Yuki, but in terms of Liam, I think he's going to get spanked by Max. Like, we'll see if he can keep his head above water. I think Red Bull's problems, the drivers are the least of their problems at the current moment in time. They need to get it together as an organization, which is probably not going to happen. So we'll see. But
yeah, I feel like this is actually secretly the best thing that's ever happened to Yuki, because if he gets in that car and gets slapped around as a, what would he be, 5th year driver? Like, that's career over. That's, you get Daniel Kvyat, right?
I think you have a better chance. I think Yuki has a better chance of jumping to another midfield team from whatever they are now, Toro Rosso, than Red Bull, because I think that Max would kill either of them.
Yeah. And, like, Lawson might be able to do the Albon thing of, like, oh, well, you got promoted, quote unquote, too quickly, and, might be able to get a seat later. I think Tsunoda being a 5th-year driver, like, I don't think anybody would have given it another spot, like, unless it's Honda. But the thing about Honda is, now that they're going to be with Aston, realistically, like, do we think there's an Aston seat anytime soon?
Oh my God. I'll say this. Lance
Stroll does not seem like he's ever fucking off to tennis like Crofty said he would.
Crofty. Listen, the Lance thing, the minute they signed Adrian Newey, I was like, I don't think that this is the favor to his son that Lawrence Stroll thinks it is. Because when you're sucking pond water at the back of the field, nobody cares. You know what I mean? People will make their jokes and whatever, but no one's paying attention to the lower midfield. You know what I mean? They're just not. I mean, you can claim you're the biggest wheel knowledge haver on the planet. It just doesn't get the TV coverage that the rest of the field or that the front of the field gets. When you're at the front, people are paying attention, and you're Checo. You know what I mean? Like,
and I mean, we saw it a little bit at the beginning of 2023 when Fernando was consistently on the podium. But, like, Fernando never got the win, and, that Aston, failed to develop. But if Fernando, hypothetically, let's say they ace the 26 regs, Aston comes out and wins 2 of the first 5 races.
I'll kill myself.
And Lance isn't on the podium for either of those wins. Oh, that heat's gonna get ratcheted the fuck up.
Oh, that is going to be well, and as you know, the points are exponential, right? So that gap gets bigger and bigger the closer you get to the front of the field. And there's just more eyes on it. The heat is stronger, but Lance Stroll doesn't, it's almost Trumpian in the way that, like, he's not, like, in order for that to work, like, in order to feel that pressure, you must, like, accept the concept of shame, right? I'm not saying Lance Stroll is like Donald Trump. Before anyone comes for me, he's obviously not, and like, diabolical, but it's just that sort of living. He just lives in a different universe than the rest of us, where none of this affects him.
Yeah, no, it seems pretty clear to me. Like, it seems pretty clear to me that there's just not a. It just feels likely to me that this is not going to go well for Lance. And I don't think people are really prepared for what that looks like in reality.
No, it's going to be if they, even if Fernando is podiuming, it is going, the pressure and the criticism of Lance Stroll and the think pieces of it all are going to grow to a level that we have not seen henceforth, because he is really, for all of the like, he has really gone unscathed. Like, yes, not by like the internet, like there are a lot of like jokes about it, obviously, but I think there's only so many jokes to be made. I think that people are mostly happy to just ignore the existence of Lance Stroll, and that will not be the case if Aston is a top team.
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of like, they were just in purgatory last year, and Fernando also wasn't great. So like, Lance looked quote unquote good by comparison, or better than comparison, because sometimes all it took was coming 17th, and you could beat Fernando.
Right. Well, it's also, there's a lot more jeopardy when you're in the back of the middle pack, right? Because there's, especially the starts, like there's just a lot more people, there's a lot more fuck shit happening, you know what I mean? Where,
but also, like, yeah, as you said, like, it's just really hard for you, like, on when you're doing your lives on Sunday morning, right? Like, we know, basically the top 8 or whatever, like, we know who 1 stopped, we know who 2 stopped, we know who got fucked on tire strategy, whatever. The number of times that it's like, oh, secretly someone like actually like 4 stopped and we just completely didn't notice.
Yeah,
like, or whatever dumb shit happened in the back. It's like there are some points in a race where I honestly just kind of go, I don't even know who's in the points anymore, because like I just don't know who's 1 stopping, who's 2 stopping, who's on old tires, who's about to pit. Like, nobody, because it's just hard to focus on 20 people, with the attention that it deserves, quote unquote.
Yeah, my focus is 100% on Charles, and whoever like interacts with him, like I see it, but it's like you said, it's very difficult to pay attention to all of it at the same time. That's why when I do my crash dog stuff, a couple times I've tried to take notes during like the actual race, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I'm trying to do too many things at once here.
Speaking of things that you did a lot of notes for, Mount Rushmore. Obviously, there are 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore. George Washington, Abe Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and Teddy Roosevelt. You are the American of the 4 of us. 2 of us. Of the 4 of them, I would just like to make a disclaimer. We are not necessarily endorsing many of the decisions made by these men.
Yeah, genuinely not an endorsement. Right, because I put all the positive things because I don't want to like shit on the drivers. This is not an endorsement specifically of
whoever you call Thomas Jefferson, you are not accusing of being a slave rapist.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Particularly because I really like the person I put as Thomas Jefferson. So we're just not including that part of it because two of these people were slave owners, and one of them in particular is a very bad person.
Again, slave rapist. Like,
right. Child slave rapist.
Oh yeah, no, even worse. Jesus Christ. I think the first one of these is very obvious, and I'm curious to see if you agree with me on this.
For George,
Lewis Hamilton is George Washington.
Oh no! See, I put George Washington as Fangio.
Oh,
because he was like the first
of the
He wasn't the first champion, but he was the second, and he stood alone for a very long time. And Fangio also served in the military. George Washington, obviously, huge military background. And Lewis specifically called Fangio the godfather of our sport. So I kind of see, obviously, George Washington, the father of our nation. And they, in sports, I think you kind of live or die by your stars. And he was a huge star.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, God damn it.
And he kind of set the model for what it meant to be a Formula One driver, or specifically like a multi-time champion.
Ooh, that's an interesting. Yeah, no, I think you're right. The case against it is that Lewis is probably the GOAT and Washington's probably the GOAT.
Well, I have Lewis on here. You'll see.
Oh God. Okay. I honestly don't have like a real case against it. I think that's very reasonable. Fangio obviously has to be on there. He is the 5-time champion, I believe.
Yes.
Like 5-time champion, was the first of the truly dominant drivers. The Lewis quote is very true there. He's very obviously on Mount Rushmore. The question, and obviously Lewis is going to be on Mount Rushmore. That leaves, but we don't know where. We'll get to him when we get to him. I'm not necessarily positive you and I are going to have the same two other names.
Well, no, you were just mean about Niki Lauda, so we're not.
I'm not necessarily saying that I don't have Niki Lauda on Mount Rushmore. I am you have somebody not on Mount Rushmore.
I know, I'm gonna get murdered for this, and I'm really sorry. But I also think that I was thinking of this more as people who, not that the person I don't have on didn't do this, but people who shaped the sport throughout history and kind of put us on the path we find ourselves on today, for better or worse. And I also tried to spread it out across history, and there was only room for one modern person, and I picked Lewis, and I'm sorry.
So I don't have Niki Lauda on my Mount Rushmore. Let's argue about this though, because I have Schumi in one of my slots. In my provisional.
Without Schumi, and I'm sorry, Ferrari people. I grovel at your feet for forgiveness.
So you have Prost, I assume, right?
Nope.
Senna?
Nope.
Then who the
another 3-time world champion. Old. Still alive.
Piquet?
You think I put Nelson Piquet on my Mount Rushmore? No, Sir Jackie.
Oh, make the case.
Well, since we're going chronologically, I do have him as Thomas Jefferson because I see them as both like worldly, very diplomatic. Like Jefferson was a diplomat for a lot of his career. And Jefferson, though we have already given our disclaimer, this is not an endorsement of Thomas Jefferson, but he did very much shape the course of U.S. history into kind of what it was today. He did a lot of stuff with shipping and kind of like stood up to the British and established a lot of trade. He obviously wrote the Declaration of Independence, the Louisiana Purchase. And Sir Jackie, the reason why I really think he deserves to be on Mount Rushmore, I'm actually working on a video on him right now, is because he was the first one to really advocate for safety in driving. He was like, can we have some barriers maybe? And they were like, shut up, pussy, like basically. And before that, the attitude, that was really the attitude. It was like, no, like it was almost viewed as, and this attitude persists, but he was the one, and I think that it had to be someone with the credentials of Sir Jackie Stewart to do it, to really stand up to people and be like, no, we shouldn't be dying like 50% of the time there's a crash. You know what I mean? Like there has to be a middle ground where we can still, and I really think that I just don't think a modern audience, forget about insurance, governments, that would not tolerate 14, 15, 16 deaths a year in the way that it would in 1960, you know?
For sure. It's funny because that's a compelling case. I had Prost for this. You know, he was one of the sort of like leading figures of the sort of, I guess you would say, sort of second F1 sort of like safety rebellion, or sort of safety movement of the, 80s and early 90s. Obviously, he was, fairly instrumental in sort of trying to make Ayrton Senna's death sort of one of the last in F1, sort of make that a watershed moment. Believe he was involved in the 82 driver's strike.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I love Prost, and I think he's hugely underrated, both in terms of his part in F1 history and his skill as a driver. I think he suffered a lot from the Senna comparison, obviously, like just in terms of public opinion, because Senna was so charismatic and charming and people loved him, and obviously incredibly talented as well. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't necessarily dislike that pick.
I think now the real answer is it should be Senna because he was fucking a 15-year-old. That's actually who should be Jefferson. If we were being really true to the person.
The way that people get in my comments every time I drop that little tidbit into a video, which I really need to stop because I do not want to be the tip of the spear on this one. I just really do not. But it's wild to me that like I went like 3 years of being an F1 fan, a diehard F1 fan, without knowing that. Like that's top line of the bio stuff. And the way that people are like, that's fine in like other countries, it's fine to fuck children. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just because it's legal. It does not mean it's not fine. Like that's actually not okay anywhere. And I want to be like the TikTok sound that's like the police sirens, and it's like, we got one.
It's absolutely insane. I just think if you're really going, like, your argument is, Sir Jackie, Niki Lauda, and then basically nobody until Lewis.
Yeah, you're right. I kind of skipped a portion there.
See, which is why I would rather skip Sir Jackie and then use Prost as the sort of like intellectual, more than just a racing driver.
I would skip Niki before I skipped Sir Jackie, because I think he was really the first one after the death of Jimmy Clark to stand up and say, this has got to change. And he got a lot of heat for it. They were like, people were really, really against. I mean, Jack EX to this day is like, I think they've kind of resolved it, but he made himself a lot of enemies by doing that.
No, that's fair. Well, okay, I'm going to assume that you have gone out of order and done Abe. Abe is Lewis?
Yes, because they both have humble beginnings, and obviously a lot of people were rooting for them to fail and thought that they would fail. And I also think they're both like very good communicators. They understood the importance of public perception and public opinion. And I also think that Lewis has been instrumental in the skyrocketing of F1's popularity in recent years. You know what I mean? Lewis is a mainstream celebrity, and sports live and die by their stars. And I think that he has been a great ambassador for the sport more broadly. And I also think that just in terms of like, I view Lewis as someone with like great internal fortitude and resolve to do what he thinks is right. And, honest Abe, they say that.
The other case for it, because I agree with all of that, and I think in terms of if we're really going to the personalities like that has always been the one that made the most sense to me. The other thing is both of them are significantly more complicated figures than a lot of people want to believe they are.
Agree.
Right?
Yes.
Lincoln was not an abolitionist in 1860. Right? He had to be dragged to that place, to that position. And frankly, I think Lewis had to be, I don't want to say dragged, but Lewis did not come on the grid as this sort of like deeply thoughtful, social justice activist, right? He didn't.
Well, I don't think many 20-year-olds are, to be fair, but
no. But like even Lewis of like the Mercedes era, like that man was like his maturity from chucking fucking caps back at Nico Rosberg to being more cogent and more able to articulate basic human rights.
I have to be honest. I don't think the hat thing, I think, is like it's just the perfect example of everything that went wrong, with the perfect embodiment of everything that went wrong between the two of them. Because I really don't think Lewis meant anything because they just had this moment, right? And I think Lewis was like, oh, let me toss him this hat. We'll have the interaction. And I think that Nico took it. I think it's so understandable from both of their perspectives. I think that Lewis I don't think he was like, oh, I'm going to toss him the number 2 hat and it's going to be this thing. But I think that Nico, in probably what was already a heightened emotional state, took that as an affront and chucked it back. And I think it's the perfect embodiment of Mercedes, because I think that while they both misunderstood the situation that was happening, neither of them were like really in the wrong, you know what I mean? And ultimately it's like deeply unserious. Like we're just fucking throwing a hat back and forth at each other. Like, but I think like, let's be honest, in some of the earlier parts of Lewis's career, there were some pretty homophobic comments that he made. And
right.
He has grown from that and has adjusted to the reality of the situation and listened when he was receiving a lot of criticism, which for someone who receives as much unfounded criticism as Lewis does would be easy not to do. You know what I mean?
Being able to sift through the torrent of abuse and find the meaningful, actionable criticism is genuinely impressive.
Exactly. And I think you're right. Like he has shown a lot of growth. And I think that he also, there are a lot of people. I think of that Laura Winter story where the women didn't have like a changing room and he had a word with the people. I think he has shown himself to be someone who really cares about. I also give him a lot of credit for the Project 44 stuff. I think it's kind of the antithesis of F1 Academy in that it might
actually have a chance at producing good outcomes.
Well, I think that in order to make meaningful change, you have to start at the bottom of the pyramid, right? Which is unglamorous and unsexy work, and something that you aren't going to get a lot of credit for, and that takes a very long time to show any actual outcome. And Project 44 is doing that. It's going into schools. It's starting young and with the scholarships, and it's not just the racing part of it. It's taking a very holistic view at Formula One and the engineers and all of the other people that work there, right? And I think that with the Hamilton Commission, he sought to fully understand the scope of the problem and was like, how do I best change this? And the PR of it was not even a consideration, which is rare.
For sure. And like the thing I always say about Lewis is whenever you think of him on track, whenever you think of how he is going to continue to age as a driver, he is a significant and deeply impressive person who is completely failed by his dumbest fans on the internet.
Agree. And I also think, circling back to the Lincoln comparison, like, I do think, I mean, it's not like, I don't think a controversial thing to say that Lincoln, he really saved the country. That was a very pivotal moment. It easily could have gone the other way. And not that I think that Lewis saved F1, but I do think that it would be very difficult to achieve what F1 has achieved today without a Lewis-like figure, without someone pushing the sport in the right direction. And
far too many people give Danny Rick all the credit for F1's sort of, recent surge. No. Danny Rick might have made the Netflix show entertaining. Almost every iconic on-track moment of the last 10 years has involved Lewis Hamilton in some way.
Right, and I don't think of course, nobody is going to get 100% of the credit, right? But I do think that he has, I think that F1 would not have been able to do what it was if it was still, I mean, and it still is obviously like a bunch of white evil millionaires, you know what I mean? But I think that Lewis, with the help of I think that Seb and ironically Nico and a lot of other people have sort of, in different ways, in different areas, have also tried to kind of push it in the right direction. But Lewis, in the position that he is in, and he didn't have to do any of this, right? Like I think that when the whole dress thing happened, when he was like, boys shouldn't wear dresses, I think he took a step back and was like, what do I want my legacy to be? And I think that he has done a very good job of saying, you know what, beyond being this great champion, I want to push the sport in the right direction. And I want to open the door for people behind me, which not everybody does in his position.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, in terms of the accomplishments, Lewis is, there. He's statistically the GOAT in basically every way. And as like frustratingly sort of like non-specific as it is, like, I'm sorry, Silverstone was probably the most fun weekend of the year.
Oh my God, it was so, it was beautiful.
Like Monaco, I think Monaco is the more satisfying weekend in the end.
Well, Silverstone's just a better race,
Well, yeah, but like in terms of, there was just like I remember that sort of like bubbling excitement of like, oh, it's a McLaren Mercedes fight. Even like after practice, we were like, oh shit, Merck's found a little bit of pace in a wet Q, P3. Like, we might be cooking with some gas here, and then we get the Merck 1-2, we get the all British qualifying quote unquote podium, right? Like, I'm sorry, it is more fun when he's at the front.
Of course. I mean, I obviously think that because I love Lewis, and obviously Monaco for me was my favorite because of everything that, it's just been snatched from Charles so many times by things outside of his control that it brought me to tears to watch him win that.
Nobody was happy. No one was like, nobody woke up Monaco qualifying morning with like a verve and a pep to their step.
I did.
No, you didn't. You were like wanting to puke the entire time.
Yes, because I know what Ferrari can do.
That was a different thing. Like, it's just it's frustrating, especially for somebody who, is a, George Russell fan who has had to deal with it, has had to, be oppositional to Lewis in a lot of ways. It's more fun with George. It's more fun with Lewis at the front, man. It's more fun, and you just hope that your guys are there at the same time.
No, and yeah. And I also think like to sustain the prominence that he has in the sport over the time that he has is very, very impressive.
I mean, if he's competitive at Ferrari, he would be. I mean, is there really any comparison to being, a title contender in essentially three distinct eras of the sport?
Mm, no, not really. I mean,
Schumi was only there for two. Seb, never won a title in another era. He obviously won four on the bounce. Max has won, four on the bounce, and
no,
64,
no one
he
has
probably
been
would
able
win
to
another one.
sustain greatness. Well, I guess Michael has too, but yes.
But I mean, but the thing is, like, Schumi couldn't win the 06 title. He did fucking nothing when he came back with Mercedes. I mean, Nico managed to win.
Say that like Nico's some scrub, but I think
he's not the greatest of all. He's not the alleged, according to Italians, greatest of all time.
Well, I think that I have always thought this, that what Lewis is doing with Ferrari is very smart, right? Because he's basically in a no-lose position right now. He's already got the 7 titles. Obviously, he wants the 8th. Like, that much is very clear. Of course, who wouldn't? You know what I mean? But if he wins, but what Michael Schumacher has over him is the Ferrari of it all, right? So if he wins his 8th with Ferrari, he wins a lot of people to his side that would have otherwise been on Michael's, right?
And even if they're not necessarily on his side, they're no longer like calling him the N-word.
Well, we'll see.
That's the very idea that he could be in the same conversation as Michael.
That makes me nervous. I won't lie to you, but
we've talked about it before. It's going to be bad. If he's not fast, it's not going to go well.
I hope that everyone. Well, listen,
you're expecting Italians to be reasonable about Ferrari. You are sadly mistaken.
Racists are going to be racist, that of course, but I hope that we can, at least from a top level, keep it classy. Because,
sorry, expecting the Italian media to keep anything classy is also a mistake.
Yeah, I'm nervous, obviously, but I think that Lewis will do well. I think we'll see. We will see. I'm obviously very stressed as well because having 2 drivers that I like on one team is like a nightmare scenario. So
yeah, not going to be fun. I can't wait. I can't wait until the 2 of them keep crashing each other out, and then we get Lando Norris's first WDC.
I'll kill myself.
Make the case for Niki Lauda as Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, so obviously Teddy best known for the New Deal, which like didn't end up happening, but I think that
he's not the New Deal.
You're right. I'm confusing them. I'm switching them. He's the national park guy. Oops.
Yes.
Okay. Well, but my point being that, well, now I've fucked everything up because I totally got the Roosevelts confused. But but Niki Lauda, I think he was instrumental in kind of the resurgence of the GPDA. Obviously, Prost was as well, so was Michael. There were a lot of other people involved too. But in terms of unionizing them, really that second round of strikes, he didn't accomplish really what he wanted to do, which was truly unionize, but he did succeed a lot like Sir Jackie in moving the ball forward. You know what I mean? Moving the chains, as they would say in football. Like he very much, and once again, because he proved himself such a badass, it earned him the capital to be able to do so, right? And he was very much an elder statesman in this thing, this period. And I think that he was super instrumental in kind of Oh no. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My computer randomly went to its screensaver. I was nervous, but he was really instrumental in sort of generating this second wave of safety measures. And while he was not always successful, I think that people like Michael, like Prost, like looked up to him as a model to continue doing so in their own journeys.
Yeah, and obviously he then serves as sort of second capacity in quote unquote public life or in F1 life as, a advisor at Mercedes, was prominent in bringing Lewis to Mercedes. The sort of, Teddy's second run, his post-presidency, his sort of, efforts to, the Progressive Party and all of that. It does work. I like it in the sense that it is, it recognizes Lauda as the bridge to the 80s, right? The 80s and 90s.
Yes. And I think that a lot of people, including Lewis, including Michael, including Prost, sort of sought to shape themselves in a Niki Lauda-esque manner. He was kind of the blueprint, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And it is it's just remarkable how
and deeply intertwined with the folklore of the sport, which I think the same is true of Teddy Roosevelt, right?
Yeah. He like it is surprising to me in a sense, and then if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, it's not. But like the impact of Niki Lauda on the modern sport, and the way Mercedes, talk about him and sort of, this is a guy who was like, an advisor, 30 years after his racing career, essentially. I don't quite remember when Lauda retired originally, but he is beloved by not just people who have seen him drive, or not just people who saw him drive originally, but like Lauda is this like extremely big figure in the sport, even though the like resume is kind of like the pure on track results are kind of like not the most there.
Yeah. See, I was kind of doing this based on this to me isn't my 4 greatest drivers.
Well, no,
I don't really see myself as like an authority.
You would try and make a claim for Seb Vettel.
Well, I don't really see myself as an authority on who's the best driver. I think that comparing over time periods and just when you look at the evolution of the cars, it's like it's almost a pointless conversation. You know what I mean?
Can we just make a can I just detour onto this point? Everybody's win records are going to be completely worthless in 5 years.
Well, because there's 800 races a season now, so it's
that's not even the bigger reason.
Why?
Reliability.
Oh well, yeah, exactly. Back
they're going to build these bulletproof cars. You used to be able to win a title with like 5 wins.
Well, right, and I also think I'm going to forget the exact statistic, but Sir Jackie talks about it in his book. It's like if you, in the 60s and 70s, if you were an F1 driver for 5 years, there was a greater than 50% chance that you would die rather than retire. So the longevity of people they just weren't hanging around as long because it was so dangerous. And when your brain fully develops, and also when you have a wife and kids, you have responsibilities. You know what I mean? You're not necessarily people at 35 are probably not going to go out there and risk their life every weekend. And obviously it's still incredibly dangerous and that's still a factor, but far, far less so than it was back when Sir Jackie or Niki Lauda or Fangio were or anyone of that generation. And even beyond, life and death, Martin Brundle talks about it all the time. He's like, I can't get into a car now because I broke my legs so many times. They don't work like that anymore. You know what I mean? The toll it took on your body it still is incredible, but back then it was really, really hard to sustain that long of a Formula One career.
For sure. Like, it's just like Max is already like, ridiculously high up on the all-time wins list. And like, if he is given, if he is ever given a truly championship winning car, like if they get the 26 regulations right, like that, he's probably gonna be, on Schumacher's ass pretty fast. And like, I don't necessarily know that will mean that he's a better driver than Schumacher, because like, I'm sorry, if your car is just not gonna blow up, like Max suffered one mechanical DNF in the last 2 seasons.
And that's
He's had 3 in this reg cycle. In 3 years of this reg cycle, he's had 3 mechanical DNFs.
And that's, you know what? Ferrari's keeping the history of our great sport alive.
But like, legitimately, like, I'm sorry, if you have, 22 race seasons or then 24 races, and your car only blows up on you once a season on average, yeah, I'm sorry, this Seb 9 wins in a row in 2013 means a hell of a lot more than the Max 10 wins in a row.
I mean, maybe, but
because Seb did it when cars used to blow up way more often.
True. And well, also that's exactly, I think that comparing between the generations is a little bit silly for that exact reason. But also an advantage to the modern drivers is that back then, this was, first of all, the pool of people that could afford to do this. People say it's expensive now, but back then you were usually older when you joined because you had to usually pay your way in. And it wasn't as much of the talent pool was just much smaller of people that were willing to put their life on the line like that. And also it was just less established as a career,
Yeah, for sure. Like anyways. I mean, if you had to put Schumacher on the list, who would you choose him to be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Okay, while you're pondering that, can I express my Schumacher hot take?
I didn't think he fit any of the presidents. He might be more like FDR. He's and he awesome wife. And
I mean, if you want to do the FDR comp, they had to literally change the rules of the sport to neuter him.
Right. And FDR, I think Schumacher really was that kind of bridge from the old school to the new school form of driver. And Schumacher did, he did push for a lot of, Schumacher was willing to get things done any way they needed to get done. And FDR definitely shared that resolve.
For sure. My Schumi hot take is that he would get a hell of a lot more slander as a quote unquote car merchant, if not for the accident.
Well, that's true of everyone who has suffered a misfortune in that way. I think we are much
different because he's still alive, right? Like the reason that we don't talk about Senna fucking a 15-year-old is that Senna died on track.
We're gonna get canceled for this. I
don't care.
I disavow that statement, even though I secretly agree.
But if he had just retired in 98 and showed up twice a year and essentially did the public profile of Nelson Piquet, right? Shows up, does a bit of English media at Brazil every year, gives an interview every year, every 2 years that causes people to melt down, but is still alive. I feel like he would absolutely get canceled way more. But he died a tragic figure, and so we all just collectively decided not to talk about it.
Well, I think it would depend on how he continued to live his life. You know what I mean? Nelson Piquet has continued to be a problem. If Senna had, I think we don't talk about the Mark Webber situation, although obviously that's different. He's the victim rather than the predator in that situation. But like, I think that it would depend on.
Yeah, then again, we don't talk about Jos Verstappen either.
What, right. And he certainly does not have the goodwill that Senna has. I think that if he, and to Senna's credit, toward the end of his career, he did very much take a little bit of a turn and sort of, realizing that caring about the future of the sport and his legacy and the legacy of Formula One and all of that kind of stuff. And I actually think that he would maybe even be more of a figure, because I think that he and Prost would have had a lifelong friendship that, we would still be getting the content from today.
So what you're telling me is that if Hart and Senna hadn't died, it would have been we would have had the full Mercedes arc twice.
Well, but because Senna, like, they were good like before his death. So
right, but like we would have gotten what we're gonna end up getting with Lewis and Nico. I'm just convinced that Lewis and Nico are gonna end up being like close again.
I don't know. I don't know if, obviously we're currently in a kind of a detente period, but
they just care too much for them not to sort the shit out.
Right. They both clearly still care about it very deeply. I
also think like both of them got what they wanted.
Right. But that's what makes it such a compelling narrative, which is crazy because these are real people and it happened in real life. And it's like, you couldn't write a better book because it's the perfect bittersweet ending, right? They both got what they wanted, but
and neither of them
still somehow sad.
No, it's great. Honestly, Colleen Hoover, maybe you should write that as a novel.
Oh my God.
Instead of writing weird domestic abuse.
Somebody needs to write the tale, but also like we don't know what really happened,
Well, there's precisely two men on Earth who know the entire story.
Exactly. And
Jensen and Seb write the book, goddammit.
Yes, that is exactly like that's who we really need to hear from on this. But I don't know that we'll ever get the full tale because, and I get it, like Lewis is, it's so interesting to me how, because I think that the reason Lewis is doing this is maybe because he's like, okay, like I want this like narrative to end. Or maybe they really, I don't know.
He cares about them too much. He still fucking loves Vivian Rosberg. He still gives the kids Christmas presents every year.
No, and he's close with the parents too. Like it's so.
Well, I don't want to say owes, but like he kind of owes Keke.
Well, yeah, Keke was instrumental in his career, and I think Lewis, he's Lewis, but like in F1, I don't care how good you are. Max needed Red Bull, right? You always need that break, right? Like it doesn't matter who you are, but especially when you're the only Black person to ever like, you know what I mean? Like obviously it's going to be harder to achieve that break, but I think like the McLaren of it all, but
And Lewis has made plenty of his own luck, right? Like,
well, of course.
The decision to go to Mercedes when everybody thought that was idiotic, But between Keke and Niki Lauda, like he definitely did get 2 breaks in having sort of, F1 father figures sort of looking out for him.
For sure. I think it's interesting, right? Because like obviously that we are in this détente period, right? Like Nico is allowed to do the podium interviews and he fucking winked at him. Like it's so interesting to me. And it really all traces back to Jeddah 2021 when he says they ask him, are you a better driver than you were in 2016? And he says yes, and a teammate, which is interesting because not only was that not the question, but it's also like not super relevant to this moment because he's not battling his teammate, right? But that is a sort of tacit acknowledgement that he played a part in the downfall of him and Nico. And then he says his name for the first time in 2022. And it's very, and now, but obviously he's still in this latest one was like, oh, well, like we were never that great of friends. I understand Lewis not wanting to be tied to Nico, like his legacy intertwined with Nico, but like he wants it to be Seb, right? And Seb also clearly wants it to be Lewis, but unfortunately, that's not how it works. Like they only really directly fought each other for a championship maybe twice, but I would say 2017 is like a little bit of a stretch. And in 2010, they were there. That was like a 4-person championship fight, right? So it wasn't the intensity of the one-on-one battle. Whereas he and Nico had those 4 years where they were just slogging it out. And Seb's is clearly Fernando, you know what I mean? But
I mean, the really interesting thing is Fernando and Lewis are such great characters in F1 for many, many reasons. But Fernando is Lewis is a great reminder of Lewis of how much luck and good decision making off the track can change your career, right? Like,
but that's part of being an F1 driver. Part of being
for
an F1 driver.
Sure. But Fernando has 2 championships and could just never be in the right seat at the right time and burn God knows how many years in,
well, he could have
McLaren,
stayed,
Honda, and then in Renault, and now maybe in Aston.
But it's more than any other driver of history that it's of his own making. He could have stayed at McLaren in 2008. He chose to run behind them, to hide behind his mother's skirts. You know what I mean? The mother being Flavio in this metaphor. And because he was scared of Lewis Hamilton. When it's the same thing.
How many times did he turn down Christian Horner for a Red Bull seat in the, 08, 9, 10 era?
Right. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that in the last 10 years, every team Fernando Alonso has gone to has gotten worse. You know what I mean? That's being able to develop the car is part of it. And we'll never truly know how much each driver, impacts that, right? But once again, Fernando Alonso has shown consistently to be a detriment in that regard.
For sure. Like, it is absolutely the case that Lewis, despite the fact that he had to play on hard mode, like, that is also part of his legacy, right? And, Lincoln, he also had to play a hell of a lot of interesting congressional politics to achieve what he wanted.
Exactly. And he was handed not the greatest set of cards and played them very well.
I think because it's my podcast, I am unilaterally putting Prost over Sir Jackie and we're keeping Nicolata. As Teddy Roosevelt, obviously, Fangio as George Washington, Lewis as Abe Lincoln, Niki Lauda as Teddy Roosevelt, and Alan Prost as Tommy Jefferino. Before you go, I don't think you've made a video on this fact, but apparently the new Ferrari car is 99% a new car. How terrified are you?
Very. I'm always terrified. I live in I'm like one of those Italian Italian greyhounds that just shake constantly. That's me with thinking about anything to do with Ferrari, but it's a choice before the year before the new reg cycle, but we'll see.
I mean, McLaren are also doing basically the same thing. Like, they're also significantly revamping this car. which makes no real sense to me, given the state of the new regs.
Well, also, how much are the aero regs really going to change? Because it is slightly smaller, and obviously the engine impacts that, but the engine is the main thing.
Sure, but like you literally cannot have the same suspension again, right?
No, it's true. I mean, it's interesting, but also I think maybe this is a function of the cost cap where it's like, well, we're going to have to spend this. It's not like we can carry the money over. You know what I mean? Like you could in previous years.
Yeah, but the counterpoint to that is like, do they literally have the manpower to build a truly competitive 2025 car? And then also like someone is gonna punt on 25 pretty fast.
I think a lot of people are probably gonna take that choice. I mean, I think Ferrari's decision to go all in is a smart one. They've been hovering around the edge of the top echelon for a while. So
it worked for Red Bull, and it didn't really seem to compromise them for 2021 or 2022 by going all in on 21.
I mean, we'll see.
And obviously Mercedes, were focused on 22, and they didn't necessarily throw everything at it, yada yada. And then, they thought they had aced the 22 regs.
Yeah.
Fucking zero side pod will haunt me forever.
Well, the thing with Ferrari is that I think that they
deserve zero the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, first of all, yes. And second of all, I think that Fred has made a lot of moves that I think are promising, but they did the same thing this year that they do every year, which is they come out well out of the gate. They have a catastrophic development situation that goes on for far too long because they don't want to admit that they fucked up. They recover from that toward the end of the year, and they're like, slay, Forza Ferrari, we're headed in the right direction. What a great year. And it's like, what about those 5 races that we just punted on for no fucking reason?
The optimistic case for Ferrari is that, it takes time to turn around an ocean liner, right?
That's true.
And that's what an F1 team is functionally, right? Like,
definitely,
there's still a lot of Bonotto in that DNA, unfortunately.
I think that Fred has, I think that they got rid of that. He looks like, I call him, this is mean, I call him Rat Boy. He's the head of Laurent something, I don't know, some French guy. They got rid of the head of operations. They got rid of the strategy guy. So like they've reworked the situation there. I think their strategy has shown significant improvement. However, I have always thought the core of Ferrari's problems are the fact that they are unwilling to own any of their mistakes, and either, overtly or subtly, that transfers blame onto the driver automatically, right? Because if it's not the car and the team, it can never be the car or the team. There's only one person left for that blame to fall on, right? Either implicitly or explicitly. So, like, for example, this year, and I think that Fred has been a lot better about this than Bonotto has. However, this year, when they sent Charles out on cold tires, and we all could hear it over the radio, that was what happened, and it was the team telling him that, you know what I mean? And then Charles said it out of, like, during his first post-race interview when he had not obviously been debriefed yet. And then all of a sudden it was, nope, that wasn't the case. His tires were fine. There was no problem. And there are still so many people on the internet who are like, how dare you? Like, there are people that are working so hard. You acting like we want them to march whatever engineer made the mistake out to do the Cersei Lannister walk of shame, when in reality, it's no, all he has to say is, yes, like unfortunately there was a malfunction. We're going to review like our operations. We're going to see how this went wrong and it's not going to happen again. End of sentence. You don't need to be like Jack from the mechanic squad really fucked this up. You know what I mean? But guess what? You are throwing someone under the bus. You're throwing Charles under the bus. So it's not like nobody's getting thrown under the bus here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, what do we make of do we think McLaren is going to run more smoothly having been in a title, quote unquote, in a title race last year?
No, because I think that Lando Norris doesn't have what it takes.
I mean, like it really feels like all the Lando fans continuously talking about like he wasn't supported enough by McLaren. He wasn't this. He wasn't getting that. It's like you are a hit dog holler, and you just refuse to shut up because you just refuse to admit what is blatantly obvious to everybody else, which is the Lando ain't the guy.
I think McLaren handled it fine. I wouldn't say well, but I wouldn't say badly. It was, I think that you can't, here's the problem. You can't come out in Bahrain and be like, they need to prioritize. You need to earn being, team orders should be implemented in one of two scenarios. One, we're splitting strategies. We're on completely different tires. Everybody here understands. Everybody here, it makes sense. Or one person is in the championship fight and one person is not. And I think that Oscar showed the willingness to do it when he was no longer truly in the championship fight. I don't think that was the case at Monza. I don't think either of them were fucking in it in Monza, but you know what I mean? Like,
but the thing is that, like, I'm sorry, it's not Oscar's responsibility to volunteer to fuck himself.
Right. And also, I do think that by Lando giving Oscar that last sprint race win, as much as I hate to tip my cap to Lando Norris, that was a classy move. And I think
tactical masterstroke.
Right. And I think that it shows a little bit of understanding of that I'm going to need to play this game, right? There's a lot of talk about, the number one driver, you want to go here because you want to be number one, or you can't go here because Max will always be number one. But whoever qualifies ahead gets the preferential strategy, period, full stop. Now, when it comes to upgrades, when it comes to development, that's where things get a little bit more murky, right? But when it comes to on track, if you out-qualify your teammate, you will be given preferential treatment. And that is held firm. That almost always happens, right? So, the thing is, this is Oscar's make or break year, right? It's his 5800th race, so he's obviously still, getting his feet underneath him. But those excuses end this year.
You're so mean about Oscar.
I'm not trying to be mean, but we can't. All of the best ones have come in and done it right away. And yes, there was more testing and this and that and the other thing, but he's also not going up against Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, but in the places that he's driven before, like, he actually has been, like, arguably the fastest driver. It's just that he seems to take a bit longer to get up to speed at some of the tracks that, other people have a significant advantage at. And if he can close that gap, then he's in a much better spot.
Sure, but I would argue that the way I see it is someone like a George who has shown brilliance, but also has made some very stupid mistakes, is far more like, that's what people mean when they say, like, they can tune those mistakes out, right? Like, that was a very Lewis in China 2010, like Seb Japan 2007. There were a couple other races in 2010. Like, they showed immature, silly mistakes and were over time able to hone those out, right? But they were never slow. Not that I think that Oscar is slow, but I guess I just don't rate Lando Norris in the same way I rate Jensen or Fernando or even Nico.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is that a lot of these teammate comparisons are sort of like definitionally subject to change, right? Like I think Bottas has probably fallen in our estimation collectively in the last like 4 years.
Not mine. I always viewed him exactly where I view him right now, which is
That's why I said collective. But like, because George Russell just came in and whipped him, right? Like comparatively whipped. Like he was on the pace on Lewis in a way that, Bottas never was. And even, what George did to Bottas and Sakir.
Well,
Right?
right. I think that the most clear example of that is Sakir. And not that I just find it difficult to believe that Oscar is somehow going to have this transformation this season and be. I mean, I hope so. I hope so. Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I think that and to be fair, for half of this year, he did not have the same car as Lando. So we'll see. We'll see.
The case for it, like my thing on Oscar was that I was like kind of leading the like I think Oscar is overrated charge after like Singapore, right? Which was like because Oscar was great for that like 5-6 race run from like Hungary, Spa, Monza, Baku, obviously, where he gets the win, right? Like, I think Sandor was in there and he came fourth, which wasn't great, but like, he was really you had Will Buxton talking about how he's a number one driver. He's got that future world championship medal. It's clear that that's why McLaren, can't make him a number 2. And then basically they got to America and he sucked. Like plainly, he sucked the rest of the year. And
sucked is a harsh way to put it, but I think Oscar is very good. I am
he had
measuring
one
him
more
against,
podium after that, and it was a third.
I think Oscar is very good. I am measuring him against the best of the best because where
he wants to be a world champion.
Right. That's
and
where
you got Mark Webber saying, I didn't know that I wasn't good enough to be a world champion until I met Oscar.
And also, I have to, you know what? I'm going to come clean with my own biases here. I am not a perfectly unbiased viewer. I strongly dislike Mark Webber. And in general, so that is probably hurting him a little bit in my unconscious bias there. But specifically, that quote pissed me the fuck off because it implies that Oscar Piastri is better than Sebastian Vettel. So if you're going to talk that game, Oscar ain't winning Monza and Toro Rosso. So
what are you going to do about Bortoletto being managed by Fernando Alonso?
Ugh, I know, another child of evil. I'm kidding.
Friends with Max Verstappen and managed by Fernando Alonso is not great for your brand.
Yeah, he just definitely is not aligning with No, I mean, we'll see. Like, I give everyone their own shake. And like I think I like Oscar and I am rooting for Oscar. I have to assess things honestly, which is that I personally do. Once again, I'm not trying to sit here and say like Lando Norris sucks, but I do not view him as the same. I think that I don't rate him as highly as I rate some of the others of his cohort. So therefore, I judge Oscar a little bit more harshly for not being able to beat him. However,
Oscar getting like 20 to Ford or whatever in qualifying against Lando Norris is worse than getting 20 to Ford by Charles Leclerc, hypothetically.
Right. And now, again, part of that was for the first half of the year, they had different cars. So
for the first 6 races.
Yes. So,
which is a quarter of the season, not half.
But he's still very much, weirdly, he's like amazing in sprint qualifying. But I'm like, girl, can we translate that over a little bit? I like Oscar. I think he's funny. I think he has a good personality for Formula One in that like he's a good like quote unquote like character figure in the sport of everyone else is so neurotic, right? I think it's interesting to throw someone with the personality of Oscar in there.
He's the right combination of like deferential to the history, right? Like he'll just drop like a a James Hunt big balls joke
exactly
in the middle of a random press answer,
right. And I think he's
more likely to give a real honest answer about
yes,
oh, I screwed up here, or I just couldn't get the lap together at this turn, or the whatever, as opposed to the like stage manage, oh, we'll have to look and see what happened. We'll see where we can improve. Points are scored on Sundays, not Saturdays. Herp derp.
I think he's very funny. I think he comes across as very likable. I'm definitely, rooting for him despite his Mark Webber affiliation. So I'll give the same to Bortoletto. Like if he's, if he is, proves himself a likable and entertaining figure, I'm not gonna hold the Fernando affiliation against him. You know what I mean?
Oh yes, you will. Come on now.
I do wish nothing but ill for Fernando Alonso. So unfortunately, no. I mean, I think it would be well, and I also think it would be good for the sport to have a Brazilian do well. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is that you hate Franco Colapinto and the entire country of Argentina.
I love Franco Colapinto so much. My husband. But we'll see. We'll see.
I'm just trying to think, is there anything else? Do you have like a particularly strong, like, I'm obviously gonna have you back on probably after preseason testing before Australia. Oh no, I did know what I wanted to ask you about. Have you seen the people who were using the post-season testing times to claim that Carlos Sainz is going to bring Williams back to the upper midfield?
Yes, I did see that.
Do you have a comment on that?
Listen, I have long the Williams case is very interesting to me because I think that James Vowles is the heir apparent at Mercedes, but I think that whether or not he ultimately gets that role very much hinges on if he can, and the bar is low, right? He just has to bring them away from the back. And so I think it's interesting. I mean, whatever. Those people are, I wish nothing. Do what you got to do as a Carlos Sainz fan in this moment because it's over for him pretty much. But I don't think postseason testing matters, obviously. But I think the Williams next year, I think they're going to be one of the teams that punts on next year. I think they've been pretty clear about that. But the Williams 2026 will be an interesting case. I also think it will be him and Alex are one of the teammate comparisons that I'm most interested to see. I think this will be a real test for Alex.
Alex Albon fraud watch has already begun.
And I'm interested.
Pinto put this man on fraud watch. I'm very curious what Carlos Sainz will do.
I'm interested to see how it goes. But I mean, I wish him nothing but the best, truly.
No, you don't. You hate Carlos Sainz.
I don't hate him. I don't hate I hate Bernie Ecclestone, but and Nelson Piquet. Carlos Sainz, hate is reserved for a very specific group of people that I actually wish ill upon. But
I haven't listened to you any time that he has ever beaten Charles in a competitive session.
Well, he's been dealt with, so he's been soundly defeated by Charles. So good luck. But also, it's so funny to me. It's like the C squared of it all is like, I'm like, I don't want to tell anybody how to be a fan of a sport. Live your truth, do what you want to do. However, somebody has to win and somebody has to lose, particularly in the teammate situation. And the person who loses gets fired, usually within 2 to 3 years. So you really you know, this is a zero-sum game. So, and I'm now fucked in that situation, but...
Well, no, you're not, because Lewis won't be fired. He will retire.
Yes.
If he just gets like, and I don't think he's going to, but if he just gets like completely outclassed by Charles, Ferrari will give him the dignified way out.
For sure. And I think it will be competitive between them.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it's going to be a very... I think this is an exciting season. You know what I mean? There's a lot of new teammate pairings. And for the first time in a while, I think we don't really have a clear picture of who... I guess McLaren is the favorite going in, obviously, but...
I don't know if that's obvious in the slightest.
Right. I think it's lined... Now, who knows? Somebody could just... Somebody could always just run away with it. But I think we're lined up to be...
incredibly bold take. I feel like McLaren's going to hit the wall that Red Bull did of like there's just not enough meat left on the bone, and I think Ferrari has more they can develop up.
Well, yeah, because it's just sometimes with Ferrari, it's just one step forward, 3 steps back.
Well, but like legitimately, the fact that they did fuck up that development and wasted all that time makes me think that there's more there, and they were already, faster by the end of the season.
Yeah, but bold of you to assume they're not just going to do that shit again.
I'm sure they probably will, but here's the thing. If the Ferrari isn't nowhere, like, the Ferrari just needs to not be nowhere for 5 races. Like, and the other thing is, I don't think the Red Bull's going to be that competitive.
No, I think they're fucked, to be honest with you. A lot of people left. It's not just Adrian Newey, but there has been, from both the Ferrari and Red Bull crowds, which are very large crowds on the internet, a massive amount of downplaying of who Adrian Newey is and what he has achieved throughout his career. And I'm not, this isn't a diss to the rest of the Red Bull engineers, but to act like Adrian Newey isn't a difference maker is crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think the Newey thing hurts, but like, respectfully, like, they just, like, I think the end of the season is a complete mirage. I think their pace at the end is a complete and utter mirage.
Oh, I think that Max is masking some very serious problems with that car.
Sure, but like, I think they got incredibly lucky in Qatar.
Yeah,
like they figured something out and they got it to hum. But like, guys, I've how many goddamn years in a row now Mercedes wanna come good, quote unquote, came good at the end and then just couldn't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And also,
Mercedes, do you have like a strong Mercedes take? I'm like vaguely, I think they're gonna punt.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to punt because of the engine prospects, but it's interesting.
Well, frankly, I also think James Allison's on fraud watch.
For sure. Although, I mean, who knows? But they have not been able to get it together, and it's been a minute now.
I mean, the case for Mercedes would be that this reg set essentially becomes the Mercedes reg set, right? Which is 2014, 15, 16 Ferrari. There was a regs change for 17, and Ferrari were much more competitive that year, right?
Yeah.
And that would be the hope for Mercedes, is that that this reg cycle is just a disaster, and you're not fixing it in this reg cycle, and you're just gonna you just gotta hope that the next one's better for you.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like kind of like normal in F1.
Yeah, and Mercedes has been really all over the place. They clearly can't figure out these regs. I also feel like they have been very track dependent, very weather dependent. So I feel like in a I feel like they could be the third team. And I feel like this year, and this is maybe just pure me, like this is projecting because it's what I want it to be. But I think that this year, really more than any other in recent history, I'm kind of seeing we're set up for a 2010-esque season where every time we roll up to the track, we don't really know who's gonna nail it that weekend. You know what I mean? And it's a little bit more, and there's 3.5 teams that are in it, and it's going to be a lot of drivers competing, and if you can pull a Seb and, sneak a couple wins in there and finish strong, that you could sneak out a championship.
I think the problem is that 24 races is too much to like. 24 races and bulletproof reliability just massively decrease the chances of sort of like genuinely putting, the third fastest car, in a like, and I don't mean the third fastest car because Red Bull had Checo, in that seat, right? But like legitimately a car that's just like genuinely off the pace. It's just harder to do. But I do think I think George will win a couple races probably, just because there's 24 of them. They tend to do better in the cool. So if you get a couple of cloudy races, if the temperature stuff continues year over year, you can probably just mark them as the favorite again in Vegas, right?
Well, exactly. Like that's what I mean. Like I think that they could stand. I don't think that they're going to be like super competitive, but I do think that they'll get a couple wins in a reg cycle that is a little bit more, or in a year that it's a little bit closer because people are hitting that wall of development.
For sure. Do we think Antonelli gets a win?
No.
Ooh, that's a potential.
I don't know. I don't want to be a Kimi hater. I don't know, but I think that it's going to be very difficult for him. I don't think he's going to beat George. Let me put it that way. And I think that there will be. I mean, we don't really. I just feel like you never truly know until the rubber meets the road, right? And we'll see. But I think George will win like 2 races. And I think that Kimi will get a couple podiums.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, like, if you have bulletproof reliability and 7 cars, that can reliably make a podium, right? Or in theory, if Antonelli is good for the purpose of this. Like, I actually think it's just going to be one of those seasons where, like, it's probably going to be hard to get 15 podiums or whatever, just because like you're just gonna even the top drivers, like coming fourth, I don't think is necessarily going to be a bad result for a Charles or a Lando or a Lewis, right?
Yeah, no,
like a Max George Kimi Antonelli, or even a Max George Lewis or a Max George Oscar, like that's a totally plausible podium that has none of the title contenders on it.
No, totally. I mean, Kimi could win. I mean, I don't know. If I had to bet.
Let's do it this way. Who has a better chance of winning a race, Liam Lawson or Kimi Antonelli?
Oh, Kimi.
Okay, good. I agree.
Think Red Bull, well, not an excuse for Checo not getting out of Q1. I think that Max Verstappen is outperforming that car by a lot more than people think he is. Because I think
the take I can't quite get around to, but I actually think if you gave Oscar Piastri both, I think if you gave Oscar the Mercedes and the Red Bull from last year and gave him the exact same run plan and like could correct for like track evolution, you would get like frighteningly similar overall speed.
Yeah, probably.
And like the fact that that wasn't particularly true is mostly the fact that the was mostly the fact that the Red Bull was the Max is just like considerably better than George.
Well, I don't think, and also for me, it's not necessarily, well, obviously, Max is supremely talented and is going to outperform any car in that respect. I think that Max Verstappen, because of his upbringing, has a unique ability to drive a bad car that most people who come up being the star do not have, because his dad was forcing him to go out there and like drive random shit and drive in the rain for a million times. And like, this is not an endorsement of that parenting method, but I do think it has given him an advantage to overcome issues that most drivers just who have been at the top throughout their respective careers were just never forced to develop that skill.
Counterpoint: the first time the car was bad this year, legitimately, he had a mental breakdown in the car.
Well, because you need to stand on business, and I think that like the whole like criticism of the team thing is like a little bit crazy, because it's like you should be advocating for them to like fix the fucking problem, right? And like you might not like Max's tone, and I think that other drivers have done it with a little bit more grace and decorum, shall we say, but I think that that's a pretty unanimous reaction to being forced into a bad car.
I'm not even necessarily talking about the radio comments, although that was true. I am talking about the single dumbest thing Max Verstappen has done in a car in the last 5 years, the turn one dive bomb.
Yes. Well, I think that that was more of a double down on the
emotional response that he's having, aka the mental breakdown he was having.
Not that. I think it was more like, I think that Max knew, I think that he is always going to push the limits more when he feels like he has to.
I mean, but part of being a great driver is knowing when you need to accept P5 or P4.
But it worked out for him in the end.
I mean, he won the title, but
yeah, but also part of it is like, you know, it's so funny that like the Team LH people are on the like Max is a monster thing. I'm like, did you guys watch the 2011 Formula One?
Well,
season?
no, they didn't watch any of it. No, they didn't.
Okay, no, they haven't. They became fans in 2020 and moved on. And I'm like, it's so funny because the Max Oscar, like Lewis did that exact same thing at COTA 2015, and I supported it then and I support it now. You know what I mean? Like sometimes all of the best ones are willing to get their elbows out when need be. And was that a stupid move by Max? Yes, but I think it is better to err on the side of aggression than err on the side of caution. You can't drive scared.
No, but I do think damage limitation and understanding what you need to do, I think, is part of being a champion.
Yeah, but if Max was driving like that, he wouldn't have overtaken 5 people in the first corner in Brazil. You know what I mean?
Sure, but there's a time and a place. And understanding a time and a place, and understanding that in Brazil, you didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah, but if Max drove, like, you are who you are. You don't turn that off for one.
But I think situational awareness is actually fairly important. Knowing to drive different people in different contexts differently, I think, is absolutely important.
Sure, but I mean, like I said, it might not have worked out for him that race, but like Max is going to be Max. It's always worked for him in the past, so why should he change?
Sure. Like if that's the case you want to make, then that's fine. I just, I don't know if he has a unique ability to drive bad cars.
Well, I think that
Because, like, respectfully, there's a man on the grid who has more experience driving shitbox F1 cars than Max Verstappen.
Well, I don't mean slow. I mean twitchy and aero issues and that
And
sort of
thank
thing.
you for describing 3 years of crap Williams that George had to drive.
Yeah, but that car wasn't fast.
He fucking made it fast.
I mean, sure, fine.
Here's my real hot take. This will be the last thing before I let you go. George Russell's 2021 season, the year he got points in Williams for the first time, he obviously put it on the front row in Belgium in quali. He put it on the second row. He put it on third in Russia quali. 4 points finishes in 5 races. Arguably could have been on for a points finish in Zandvoort if he didn't crash in quali, which obviously he crashed in quali, but like, he had pace that weekend.
Made a stupid move around the outside of Valtteri Bottas, crashed both of them out, and then physically assaulted him.
Why do you have to bring up?
Because George Russell getting out there and being like, Max is this evil monster. I'm like, you, sir, are the same.
I'm not. Again, I have never defended the idea that George Russell is a sane human being. He's very clearly a psychopath with who understands that he's a psychopath enough to prioritize his PR.
No, that's why Max and him hate each other so much, is because it's sides of the same coin.
Yeah. It's just one of these things where it's like, I just don't. George Russell's 2021 is more impressive than anything Lando Norris has done in his career.
Well, I'm not impressed by anything Lando Norris has done in his career.
No, but if you tweeted that a random season at a back marker is more impressive than a 4-win season, you would get your head chopped off on F1 Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just because the Lando people are,
But like, that's also, I think, objectively true, is that with the car that you had, it is far more impressive to put a shitbox Williams in the top 3 in qualifying twice.
Sure. I also think it's hard to compare those two things, because I think that it's a much more difficult proposition to come in, ace it, do what you need to do week in and week out, and then it is to have a handful of standout weekends in a back marker, psychologically.
It's a different thing, but like, at some point in terms of like raw outperforming your talent, that is the case.
I mean, I think that what Lando proved this year is that, for a long time, we've watched Seb and then Lewis and then Max come in and handle business week in and week out, by and large. I mean, of course, not every weekend, and they make it look easy because they are at such an echelon of talent that it is, by and large. But I think Lando Norris proved that even for someone who is a very talented driver, he couldn't do that. You know what I mean? He could not achieve that level of consistency. The start situation that we don't talk about, people are like, oh, we hem and haw over the 7 points Lando lost in Monza. And I'm like, well, what about the negative 800 positions on the first lap? You know what I mean? Like, that's, I feel, more of a critical issue. But I think that he proved that you need to be at the very, 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 very top end of F1 talent to be able to pull off that level of consistency and performance.
Yeah, but he told us that it was easy.
Mm-hmm. And he was wrong.
Like, that's the really funny thing, is that like that the Lewis quote will hang around his neck like a noose forever.
That's the thing I don't get about Lando, though, is like, why? I want to like sit him down and be like, why? Because it's so clear. There are so many examples of like the Danny Rick Drive to Survive thing, where they're like, he's like, I don't feel bad for him. Why should I? I get what he meant, which is, even if he phrased it differently, if he was like, well, he's my teammate, I want to beat my teammate, of course, like, I empathize with what he's going through, like, that must suck, but like, I'm happy with what's happening because I want to beat my teammate. But what it so clearly was is he will get a question and he refuses. It's almost like he resents that he's expected to give this canned whatever. It's such an easy answer. I know what the answer is supposed to be. You know what it's supposed to be. It's such a softball. You know what I mean? And he almost petulantly refuses to give the answer that people want. You know what I mean? And that's because that's what it was for the Lewis thing. They're like, and they're asking everybody. It's not just Lando. They're like, oh, like, you know, Lewis, what do you think? Like, Lewis just won his 7th title. It's such an easy, that's such an amazing achievement. Like, Lewis is someone I've always looked up to. He's an icon of our sport.
I think the answer is that he genuinely did believe that. I think it's that he genuinely did believe that, yeah, I mean, if I was given, you know, the W11, I would also won, you know, 15 fucking races or whatever. I don't even know if they had 15 races that season because that was the COVID season, obviously. But like, I think he genuinely believed that.
He does, and I don't fault him for believing that. You have to believe that to succeed in Formula One. You know what I mean? You have to believe.
The one thing about Lando, I'll give him, you know, he says things. Like he is a better quote in the sheer sense of like willingness to say what he actually believes compared to just giving, you know, PR, you know, slop. You know,
but I think that there's a difference, but the thing is, he has such a lack of awareness of when to do that and when to take the easy way out.
The problem is that he holds stupid thoughts.
Right. Well, it's almost the antithesis of Max, where Max is very good at making a funny comment or being a little bit shady or a little bit sarcastic in the moment. But then in those, he's also very careful to be respectful where he needs to. And I feel like Lando is almost resentful of the fact that he's expected to be respectful of his forefathers. It's the same thing with the Seb thing.
Oh yeah, no, that he needs to, that, you know, that he should focus more on driving.
That isn't even that part I get. It's like, oh, like, he's clearly making a joke about people that's a trope, right? Like, oh, he should focus on that's not even really the part I take issue with. The most egregious one was when he was like, when did Sebastian Vettel even win races? Like, girl, you were in Formula One for one of those years. But also the fact that he made those Grill the Grid videos are what, like 10 minutes long? So in the 2 minutes that you appear on screen, you squeezed in 3 separate digs at Sebastian Vettel. Like, did he just wake up that morning and was like what?
I mean, like, it's just so absurd.
Right. I'm like, why? The thing is, I'm like, why? Like, it's just very odd, and it comes across as very petulant. And he is very, and the same thing, the crazy part is there's several Lewis quotes, like the thing where there's another one where he asked about Jensen, was like, oh, I was surprised that he resigned for 4 years, like whatever. And they ask him about that quote, and he just goes out of left field and was like, if Lewis hadn't been in a winning McLaren in 2007, he wouldn't be the driver he is today, and like all of this other stuff. Like,
my favorite fact about this, before you continue making your very valid point, would you like to know how many wins the 2006 McLaren got?
How many?
0.
Yeah, they were bad, I'm pretty sure.
It was not Kimi Antonelli, Kimi Räikkönen, and I don't remember the other driver was, but like a car with Kimi Räikkönen won 0 races.
It's just very, I guess I just don't get it. And it's very strange to me. very clearly has this like bizarre chip on his shoulder, which is odd to me considering he's like the golden boy of the British media and this next generation. And I don't, it's, he just, it's like but he so clearly wants to be liked, but he won't, he won't take an easy win.
Yeah, because he's dumb. Whereas Oscar and Max and George, can talk extemporaneously. I'm sort of excluding Charles because his English just isn't like he's obviously can speak English. I'm not saying that, but like, Charles tends to be a bit more measured in English just because, well, partially the like reverence for Ferrari stuff.
Well, yeah, I think more so than his English, I think it's the Ferrari of it all, really. Like, I think that
yeah, but most of the time, if you get a spicy interview with him, it's Canal Plus.
Right. Well, I think it's obviously easier to joke and make allusions like that in your in a language you feel more comfortable in. And obviously, English isn't Max's first language either. But I also think he, by virtue of being a Red Bull junior rather than a Ferrari junior, he's had to do this bullshit in English for a lot longer than Charles has.
Right, exactly. Like, to be clear, Charles knows like at least 3 languages.
Yeah.
Well, because obviously he knows Italian,
French, and English, I think.
Yeah. Like that is far more impressive than anything I could do, let alone Charles's considerable on-track talent. This is not me coming from Charles Leclerc, but like even the Max Brittany moment is like you can have whatever opinion you have and like whatever. That is just like objectively really
callback.
It's really fucking funny.
I think I just don't give Max.
You're too in your head about this. It is one of the funniest things an F1 driver has done in the last 10 years.
I disagree. I think it's giving homophobic. I think it's giving not even homophobic.
Okay, well, as the gay man in this conversation,
yeah, but
I never read it that way.
Not even homophobic. I think it's giving. I think that Nico Rosberg is an easy target, and I think that it comes. If I thought it was coming from like more of the Jensen angle, I would, but he is a Mark DC acolyte, right? Like he rolls with that crowd. And I just think I can't even.
Sorry. Do you know that there's like a hockey tournament on right now? Do you know anything about the World Juniors?
I know that poor Kazakhstan got their ass kicked by Czechoslovakia a couple like days ago, but that's the only part of it I've watched. I know what juniors is, but
okay. So Canada is fighting for its life right now. We are currently losing to Czechia.
Sorry, it's not Czech. Sorry, it's not Czechoslovakia. Czechia.
I didn't feel like I didn't feel like correcting you because
I'm very sorry to the Czech and Slovak people who are no longer one. I do apologize for forgetting that.
Yeah, it just wasn't worth correcting you. But I have the Canada game on right now. This refereeing is some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen. It is so bad. Like,
I'm very sorry to the Canadians.
Oh no, they got completely bailed out because they decided to give a Czechian a diving penalty on a blatant trip. It's fine, but like, it's just really funny. People are like, "Oh, the F1 stewards are so bad." Literally, watch any international hockey, you will want to break shit.
I think that's maybe my hottest take is that the stewarding has been fine recently, and the only reason people have a problem with it is because Lando Norris got the same penalty that people have gotten a billion times before.
So my take on the stewarding is, people want the stewarding to do a thing that it's not meant to do and not capable of doing and has never been designed to do in the history of the sport.
It's never going to be black and white, but I think that
it's not even that. They wanted to be that if you do what Lewis did to Max, like, you can't win the race, or you do what Max, like, they want it to be so punitive that if you crash somebody out of a race or whatever, you can't then gain points from crashing somebody out. And it's never designed to do that, right? Because the thing is, whether or not somebody gets a puncture or not, somebody taps wheels or not, somebody's car explodes or not, is fundamentally not very predictable from the move that you make or don't make, or the thing that you do that is illegal, right?
It's what really pisses me off is that it's so people
Canada.
They want it to be judged based on the outcome, not the act. And like that's very silly. And I think that the overtaking rules have never been clearer than they are right now. And I think they enforce them okay. I think it could be better. I think it could always be better.
But something like Austria, like Max shouldn't have been like dropped 70 seconds just because Lando drove back to the pits too quickly.
Well, and it's only because it's Lando, and that's what irritates me. Like,
you had people doing this after Silverstone 2021 too.
Well, yes, that was again. It's so funny that they do the same. The Lewis people do it for Monza, and the Max people do it for Silverstone, and they can't see that they're doing the same thing, and it's like wildly amusing to me. But I've always thought this. I'm like, the way 2021 was just, there was a lot of underlying tension there for other reasons. But this year in particular, the way that people act like nobody has ever crashed anybody out of a race before. And these are the same people that deify Schumacher and Senna. And I'm like, pick a side. You know what I mean? Like, those two were the kings of crashing people out. Intentionally to win a championship. Both of them did it. Like,
yeah. And like at the end of the day, this is my like probably like most Lewis Hamilton hater opinion, but like Max is the rightful champion of 2021.
I mean, no, I disagree with the decision that was made. I think that why have rules if you're just going to do what you want anyway, right? I think that it was wrong, but I also think that the decision that was made was wrong. But at the same time, I don't think that this was some grand conspiracy against Lewis Hamilton. I think that the F1 was so excited after so many years to finally have a competitive championship. And I think that there's no way that they were going to let that race end under safety car. And the FIA's greed, or F1's greed, is just as much of a factor as the weather or the sandwich bag that floats into your exhaust pipe or the fucking lizard you hit running across the track, or any of the other million uncontrolled factors that are outside of the driver's control. I think what they should have done is red flag it and just do a 2-lap shootout. But they obviously didn't think that far in advance. And I think that it's unfair to put that on Max when both teams were advocating for their side. But at the same time, I think by trying to manufacture the ending they wanted, they ruined what could have been one of the better seasons of F1 in the last 2 decades.
The season's still incredible, and I think anybody who says it's ruined by the ending is just...
No, it isn't ruined by the ending. It cheapens it.
It's still incredible racing, and if you want to go back and watch those races, it's still an incredible quality of racing. But also Max is the rightful winner of the season because, like, respectfully, if Lewis doesn't crash him out and then Valtteri doesn't destroy half of his car by going bowling, it's, not even close.
I mean,
that shit's wrapped up by Qatar at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also that
if Lewis doesn't like completely forget how to drive going into going into turn 1 at Baku, it's over as well.
Well, there were also some calls that went in Lewis's favor toward the end because they wanted it to be competitive. However, I think
engineered Jeddah to make sure Lewis won.
I think that
Max absolutely should not have gotten a 5-second penalty. Should not have been made to give that place back, and then absolutely should not have been given a 5-second penalty for what it was very obviously not a brake check.
Right. And
How do we always do this? Where I said 20 minutes ago this was going to be the last topic, and that we're on like 4 different things since.
I think that you cannot deny that the ending of that cheapens. And I feel for Max because it's his first title. And
I'm glad Max has an undeniable competitive title win for his own sake.
Sure. I think what happened to Lewis was fucked up and he has every right to be mad about it. But I also think that, you know, the FIA doing some fuck shit or the Formula One doing it is, you know, it happens. But what happened in Abu Dhabi was undoubtedly wildly unfair to Lewis Hamilton.
For sure. But it is what it is.
So I have always said this across every sport, so I have to stick by what I think, which is that you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? It is what it is. It's like the NCAA when they go back and they remove championships. Like
Reggie Bush still won that Heisman.
Right. You can't go. We already did it. The nets have been cut. One shining moment has played. You can't undo that. You know what I mean?
You can't unring that bell. Yeah, no. It's true. I mean, which is why I'm grateful for Lewis not attempting to like take it to the fucking court of arbitration of sport and try and get them to like, you know, off track declare him the winner. Like, come on, that would be such a cheap way to win your eighth.
Lewis handled it with class and in a way I think that Lewis is a classy person, and I think that he also to an extent understands that you can't undo the history that was written, right?
Yeah, you didn't cross the line first. Like, I'm sorry you didn't. Like, no one would ever treat that championship as legitimate if he had won it in a courtroom.
Have him go out there and rerun Abu Dhabi, just the two of them.
Honestly, pay-per-view event on Netflix.
It is fundamentally unfair, and I think that if I were Lewis Hamilton, I'd be pissed about it to the end of time.
I think if I were Lewis Hamilton, I'd be pissed at myself for locking up in Baku.
Well, yeah. We can do ifs and buts about all. Well, and that's the thing is like, that's the thing with F1 is like,
he started a 2-lap shootout on pole position and he didn't score any
but
points.
You can do that about every single world championship that was competitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think in this case, a lot of Abu Dhabi is a convenient excuse covering up a lot of mistakes and good luck. Fuck.
Oh no. Did Canada concede a goal?
We had tied it and then we just gave up a goal with 39 seconds to go.
Oh no. Well, good for Czechia.
Sorry, what?
I said, well, good for Czechia. They're much smaller than Canada.
I mean, we did literally already lose in this tournament to Latvia, so my tolerance, my tolerance for oh, what a plucky upstart story is completely done. Also, the guy who was coaching this team, who's a fucking idiot, used to coach the Suns, so fuck this. Fuck him. Fuck the other Dave Cameron.
Like the basketball team?
No, the Ottawa Senators.
Oh, I thought you said the Suns.
No, the Senators. Sens is what I said.
I was like, what? That seems like a weird.
Okay, we need to get you out of here. I have taken up over 2 hours of your time. Jesus, how do these always become 2-hour recordings?
Because you are a Lewis Hamilton hater, and I refuse to concede the point.
Have you ever conceded a singular point in your life?
Probably not.
No explanation, just your answer. Who will win the Super Bowl?
Lions.
Oh wow. I
could feel good about that. You know what I mean?
I think it's going to be the Bills.
No.
My one strong take is it's not going to be the Chiefs. That team, they're frauds.
Yeah, they've had.
They're running on vibes and Tay Voodoo.
Well, and also, let's talk about the referee. You want to talk about some bad refereeing? the
I would keep here for another 20 minutes if I complained about Chiefs refereeing.
Yeah, it's a little. No, I mean, I'm not. No offense, love Taylor. Fuck the Chiefs. I do not want Patrick Mahomes to surpass Tom Brady's achievements. So
yeah,
so sorry to my girl Tay, but
the Bills need to get there. The Bills need to beat the Chiefs and then get their run to the Super Bowl. Bills Lions is definitely the feel good like loser finally wins one bowl.
Yes, although it would be tremendously funny if the Bills got to the Super Bowl and lost again. Like that would be, we need curse watch if that happens.
Yeah.
Because that's their whole thing, right? Like they get to the Super Bowl. I
mean, the actual funniest one would be Bills Vikings, which is just the curse, the curse versus the curse.
It's true. It would be the battle of the curses. So
oh my God. Thanks for doing this. Formula whatever on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. I'll link to your YouTube channel. Formula _ whatever on Instagram.
Yes.
Follow me on Twitter at @Scrum Follow the Scrum Show on Twitter at Scrum _show. Political writing, everything else. Sorry, it's all Canada these days. I know you read my stuff, but I know you also probably tap out at the depths of Canadian nonsense that's currently going on.
Yeah, I don't have a strong enough understanding of the Canadian political system to fully grasp what's happening, but I do know that you're just battling the Justin Trudeau. TrueNon is really up in your business these days.
It is. It's like the Biden dead enders, except the polling is like 3x worse. No, and we also have the literal experience of Kamala Harris saving 4 Senate seats.
I also saw I just saw this interaction where they were like, "You are a Trump supporter," and I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh, do you know about the conspiracy that I am being paid by Vladimir Putin in rubles?
Well, you should probably demand a better paycheck then, because that is fallen like a stone. The value of the ruble's fallen like a stone. So I would negotiate a better contract on that one.
My favorite thing is that like the day that was like a coordinated attack against me, somebody I know was drinking at a reception on Canadian Parliament Hill, and that people were like, staffers were like quoting the RuPaul joke about me. So like it was a deeply weird day. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, of course.